welcome back to the Tudor and 17th century experience. We are here in my newly laid out orchard, and this month we are going to focus on the pear. Two reasons in particular, actually three. Number one is it's seasonal, very important for the Tudors. Secondly, so many of us are sadly all locked up at home at the moment, and it's difficult, thanks to COVID, to get ingredients that are a little bit exotic. So with today's recipe, we should have all the ingredients at home or be able to get them easily. And last but not least is the sad news that we here in the UK have lost one of our oldest pear trees very recently due to a new project being built in Warwickshire. So in honour of this sad 250 years plus pear tree that had to die, today's contribution is 2 pears. The earliest record of a garden design incorporating an orchard specially for pears and warden trees dates to the late 16th century. It was commissioned by a devout Catholic called Sir Thomas Tresham, who had a lodge at Leafton in Northamptonshire, and my garden very much reflects his orchard here, and you can actually still go and visit his in Northamptonshire today. Worth checking it out. In Lawson's New Orchard and Garden, which was published in 1597, he advised that hard winter fruit and wardens were not fit to be gathered until Michaelmas, which is September the 29th, and it now being October, perfect. So just a bit wet, hence my Wellington boots. Right, we are heading indoors now, where I'll show you some other relevant information. Although the pear has never been as popular as the apple, these long-lived trees have a long history in England. Probably not indigenous, the wild pear arrived in England at least in the Saxon times, but most probably earlier than that. The Saxons called the fruit the pear or peru. This is probably the ancestor of our domesticated pears, which were introduced to many parts of Europe by the Romans and later during the medieval period by monks. In England, that is particularly by the Cistercians. The Domesday Book of 1086 mentions old pear trees several times as boundary markers. There have been a variety of domesticated pears since the Romans, but identification can be tricky as names changed all the time. England's best known and still available early pear is the Warden, which was first mentioned by the English poet and theologian Alexander Neckham in the 13th century. A Warden is basically a firm, textured cooking pear that keeps well over the winter, a property highly appreciated in a time before refrigeration. In 1530, Cardinal Wolsey is reputed to have been eating roasted Wardens at the moment when he was seized with his fatal illness. In 1526, one of the earliest entries of Pears features in this book called the Great Herbal, and we can see the pear there. It was published by Tudor Travel, as I said, in the year 1526, and it gives a lovely, very basic, naive woodcut picture of a pear and a short text to describe what we now know as the wild pear, which is actually become rather scarce. Harris, one of Henry VIII's fruiterers, introduced pears from France and the Low Countries in 1533 for his orchard at Tyneham in Kent. And in 1548, William Turner, there is his book, or rather a copy, he lists the wild pear and its various names in other languages, like in Greek, and without my glasses I can't see, but it's somewhere up here. Let me have a look whether I can find it. Where was it? Yes, here, there. That small entry here where my finger points is the entry on the pears, and it gives the Latin name followed by the Greek, the English pear, the Dutch and the French. And in a different book of his, he does mention a revival of interest in orchard management, which took place particularly in his time, and in his herbal called the Herbal, and it was published in 1568. In 1580, Harrison said that the perry, or pear cider as we know it, was made from pears in Sussex, Kent and Worcestershire. The pear's importance was recognised by the incorporation in Worcester's city's arms of the three pears sable at the direction of Queen Elizabeth I when she visited the city in 1575. Now it's time to go to my beloved John Gerard, who brought out a massive book in 1597, and here we go. He dedicates quite a few pages to the pears. He illustrates eight particular ones of them: the Genneting, the pear royal, the Queen's pear, the Catherine, where we have the big picture of, the St. James, the Bourgomet, the bishops and the winter pear. He also lists on the next page a selection of wild hedge pears and states that all of them taste too harsh and bitter for consumption and are used for making perry cider only. William Shakespeare does not appear having enjoyed the pear a lot, as most of his references to pear are not favourable at all. For instance, from the Merry Wives of Windsor, We have a crestfallen as a dried pear. We have from A Winter's Tale, I must have saffron to colour the Warden pies, which is quite humorous because when you cook or boil pears, in particular the Warden pears, you don't need to colour it because it changes into a lovely reddish colour all by itself. So to make him say he wants to use saffron to colour it is quite humorous. And people at the time would have understood this underlying message, where we, being unaware of the colouring effects, probably missed that one. And in All Well That Ends Well, we have another section devoted to the pear, where it says, your old virginity is like one of our French withered pears. Now that is not a compliment at all, is it? Pears came in all different sizes, tastes, textures and colours, and in his 500 Points of Good Husbandry, published in 1573, the English poet and farmer Thomas Tusser is one of the first to mention the different colours that pears or Wardens appear in. General storage advice was given in the second book, entreating the ordering of orchards by Conrad Heresbach from 1577. He advises to store pears in sand, in flocks, which is scraps of wool, to cover them with wheat or chaff, or dipping the stalks in boiling pitch and then hang the pears up. Keeping the pears in freshly boiled wine was another and is my favourite. Pears are often depicted in Renaissance religious paintings and frequently feature in Flemish flower and fruit paintings of the 15th to the 17th century. The pear gives also rise to a metaphor, mostly sexual in nature, and a comparison to the shape of the womb. And here are a few for you to glance over. And now we come to the exciting bit where we go into the kitchen and we are going to prepare the dish of today. And note my prepare note. I love English puns, and anybody whose first language is not English will realize that it actually is quite difficult to get it right. But I love English puns. So when I produce one like this, I'm going to prepare the dish. I get quite proud of myself. Okay, off into the kitchen to the fun bit. Pears were a popular gift to the nobility by the commoners, and we have several records where that happened. For instance, Thomas Cromwell on the 15th of December 1534 received pears, and we also know that some money was given to a poor woman who brought pears or Wardens to him on the 2nd of April 1539. The Tudors were not yet convinced about eating pears raw was actually a good thing to their cold and wet properties, but they did recognise its health benefits, eaten cooked with the addition of sugar and spices. Boiled in honey and wine made them agreeable and wholesome. The health benefits of the cooked pear or warden were acknowledged by the Tudor physician Andrew Ward, who said in his Dietary of Health, which was published in 1542, that they were nutritious, roasted, stewed, baked, and comforted the stomach, especially if enjoyed eaten with other preserved fruits, such as apple. A view that was shared by Christopher Langston in his Introduction to Physique in 1545, William Bullen in his book of Simples, that was published in 1562, and Thomas Cogan's The Heaven of Health, which came out in 1584. John Harrington's message of 1607 is clear. Raw pears are poison, baked a medicine. And on that note, we will follow their advice and make full use of this delicious fine fruit and prepare a dish which is frequently featured at the tables of the nobility as part of their banquet. This recipe is also very easy to make, and the aroma is just divine. It won't disappoint even the fussiest eater. Now, the recipe is called Wardens or Pears in Conserved. It was a very popular recipe at the time, so we have numerous recipes that are all very much alike. They did copy each other a lot in the days before copyright. I have chosen one from this book, which we've seen before, the Proper New Book of Cookery, which was published the earliest in 1545. The latest one came out in 1597. But Thomas Dawson, in his book, has a very similar recipe. So it really doesn't matter as long as the end result is the same, and they all are. How they got there, slightly different sometimes. What you need is the following. You need pears. You need pears. You can tell I did apples last time. Pears, 1 pear per person. You need wine. This one here uses Romney wine. Now, Romney wine was a red wine from Greece, relatively sweet, but any sweet red wine will do. You will need sugar, quite a lot of it. You will need clear honey, again, rather a lot of it. You require certain spices, cinnamon, cloves, and ginger. And if you want to follow Thomas Dawson's recipe, you will also need some rose water. But as many people don't like rose water, I've decided to go with the other one instead. Right, first of all, what you do is you take the pear, make sure it's not soft. It has to be really, really hard. That's why Warden pears are ideal. And you need to, let me just put those to the side, and that as well, clearing a bit of space here. And we put those over there and here, so I can put down my chopping board. Right. Important is that the pear stays whole. We don't cut it, but we do, in this recipe, we do peel it So basically you leave the stalk there and you just peel the pears. There are the other recipe, Thomas Dawson's recipe, does not peel them and does not boil them, but he puts them into a vessel like this, an earthenware pot, and he puts them in whole without any fluid, and he bakes them in the oven. Oops, right, so you've got your pear all in whole, or left all in whole, not cut, just peeled, and you put it in your cookery pot, and then you add the red wine, and the honey. I've given you modern measurements in the text that accompanies this video, because people often prefer to have some guidance in how much to use of each ingredient. I normally work completely without such measurements, very much the Tudor way. I go by gut feeling, but it's not everybody's preference. So if you want to know more precise quantities, you can look it up. You can either use the cinnamon sticks, which is the classic Tudor way, or you can use the ground up cinnamon. You add that. The same goes with the cloves. You can either add the cloves themselves or a pinch of the ground one. And again, the same with our ginger. Mind you, I think the ground version does work best. So we put that in. And now we put it into, oh no, I forgot the sugar. Right, I'll add that in a minute. So sugar goes in now as well. Then you put it on your hob. Oh, there's more honey. I knew I had it somewhere. Oops. And you basically let that boil. First, let it boil up quickly. Make sure that the honey and the sugar is mixed in. And then you put it onto a lower heat and let it boil slowly for about 20 to 40 minutes. And because this is noisy, I'll just put it away for the moment. Just depending on how long it takes for the pear to soften. As I said, Thomas Dawson, he went for a different approach. He put his pears into an earthenware pot, that's a modern one, no fluid, and he puts it in the oven. Again, for about 30 to 40 minutes. It depends really on what type of pear or warden you're using it. It's got to be soft. So we'll put that in now. But because it takes a long time, what I've done is I've prepared a lot early on to show you what it looks like. This is a pear that basically was baked, so it turns all brown and quite soft. And our Thomas Dawson, so that's the other recipe, he now does the same in that he leaves the stalk in, he leaves the other bit at the bottom, and he just very, very carefully removes the skin now. Now, in my opinion, that is a little bit more tedious to do, and it doesn't look quite as smooth, but it is the healthier option. Fun enough, I wonder whether Thomas Dawson knew that by baking the apple you actually retain more vitamins in the pear than by cooking it. But you know, it's whatever you prefer. It's easier to bake. You can't go wrong. You can't burn it as such. Where with the hob one, you do need to keep an eye on it. You do need to check it all the time, stir it, making sure it doesn't burn to the bottom. But you can see the color is coming through. The only difference is that because it wasn't boiled in the wine, it retains very much its light color. I've finished doing his recipe, which was white wine with some rose water, sugar and honey and all the spices we discussed. And he says that you should put it into a gully pot. Now that's a gully pot. It's basically an earthenware container that's been glazed inside. And look, I've put in the pear and the syrup that was being produced by putting the pears into the oven and baking them. I put on top. Clearly, his recipe is for preserving them for a later day. So he says, put it in, put the pear in, and make sure that the syrup covers the pear completely, which we have done. But we are going to concentrate on the other one, this one here, which boils them in wine and the spices. And I've done that before to show you what it looks like, because it all takes a bit of time. So here, can you see? The pear has taken on this absolutely gorgeous red deep color, and also has absorbed the taste, the aroma of the wine honey mixture. It's absolutely divine. It's very soft. It's soft now, you can feel by touching it. It's a bit squishy, you know it's done. And because we've done the peeling before, it just looks that much neater in my opinion, but it doesn't matter which approach you take. And then you put it into a nice little bowl. That could be either an earthenware, very Tudor-esque with the green glaze, or you can choose some more fancy glass container like this one, and you put it in and then add the juice. I'm just trying to now going to pour some in. There you go. And you can add the finishing touch, which is in my case here borage flowers. They flower here in England really all through the winter, all the summer. I don't think there's any season where they don't flower, and they're just gorgeous little flowers, safe to eat. Oops, this one turned over. And you can put them onto the surface of your nice syrup. They float easily, and that is it. This is now a typical Tudor wet suckered banqueting stuff, fit for any king or queen, and definitely fit to feature on your next dining table. So give it a go. It's really easy, as you've seen. Just takes a little bit of time cooking, but you can't go wrong. You don't need to be good in cooking or know a lot about it. You really can't go wrong. And it does taste divine. It's lovely. So good luck, enjoy, and I'll see you in about 4 weeks' time again, hopefully. Bye.